Hey everyone, it's Michael and welcome back to the channel. Now, it's been reported that the SEGA Genesis Mini will be coming out. The only thing that we didn't know about is if it would make its way stateside. But last weekend, we got news from Sega, courtesy of the official Sega Twitter, that the SEGA Genesis Mini will be coming out stateside on September 19th, 2019, $79.99 USD. I heard that the Canadian price will be around, say, $99. So this is what we know. It's developed in-house by Sega, software built by M2, best known for handling emulation of classic Sega titles under the Sega Ages brand. And since the SEGA Genesis Mini is a first party product, it means that AT Games will not be involved in the development of this hardware. Now, AT Games, since 2005, that was the 2005 was when the initial distribution partnership with Sega began. So AT Games, they've been releasing retro hardware products based on Sega hardware, and the market has, since 2005 up until now, the market is filled with all these retro hardware products developed by AT Games using Sega, based on Sega hardware. You know, I'm pretty sure you can go to any Walmart in North America and pick up the officially licensed retro AT Games version of the Sega Genesis. I think I saw one recently for like, it comes with like 100 games and HDMI out, plugs right into your TV, and I think it was selling for about $30. But like I said, there's been so many of these Sega Genesis licensed retro consoles on the market due to AT Games that, you know, I'm pretty sure you can even pick one up for $10 at the Salvation Army. Okay, so let's get into the news. So during the weekend, Sega released information on the Sega US Twitter about the Sega Genesis Mini. You'll get the Sega Genesis Mini, 40 preloaded games, 2-wire 3-button controller pads. I'll get into that in a minute. HDMI cable and power cable. Now, about the control pads, you know, a lot of people on the internet are saying, hey, how come we're getting, in North America, we're getting the 3-button, but Japan is getting the 6-button? Well, you know, there's not an official response from Sega on this, but it's being reported that Retrobit is they're currently selling officially licensed Sega Genesis 8-button control pads. So this is a 6-button layout with 2 LNR shoulder buttons. So in my opinion, I don't think it seems like Sega doesn't want to step on their toes, meaning Retrobit. So I think that's the reason why in North America they're selling a 3-button controller instead of the 6-button controller. 6-button controller will be sold overseas. Now, whether or not this Retrobit Sega Genesis 8-button control pad will work with the Sega Genesis Mini, I have no idea, but you can buy one right now from Retrobit, and you can check out retrobit.com/Sega collaboration. I have the link down below. You can buy one now and then hold on to it until September 19th and then see if it works or not. Also is in more news, only 10 games were made known to the public out of the 40. So it's Altered Beast, Castlevania Bloodlines, Comic Zone, Dr. Robotnik, Mean Bean Machine, Echo the Dolphin, Gunstar Heroes, Shining Force, Sonic the Hedgehog, Space Harrier with a H, 2, Toe Jam and Earl, and Sonic the Hedgehog. Of all these games, I'm only aware of Sonic the Hedgehog and Echo the Dolphin because, you know, to tell the truth, you know, I originally, growing up, I was born in the almost the late 80s, 1985. So, you know, when the 90s came out, I wanted a video game console. All my friends had a video game console. All my friends had the Sega Genesis. I wanted a Sega Genesis. So before Christmas of, I believe it was 1991 or maybe Christmas of 1992, I begged my mom for a Sega Genesis. Christmas of that year, I ended up getting a Super Nintendo. And while I was disappointed, I was happy because, I got a video game console. First person in my family to get a video game console. And, it turns out that, I was really happy to get a Super Nintendo. Sonic the Hedgehog was very cool. I used to go over to my friend's house and play Sonic the Hedgehog, but Super Mario World to me was the most amazing thing ever. And I had that one game for years, upon years, upon years. I probably had that game for like 5 years until I think maybe around 1996, my mom and sister went to New York City to visit some family members, and they bought a game for me, and that game turned out to be Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. So I believe I only had 3 games for the Super Nintendo: Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Mario World, and Mega Man X. And I played the hell out of those games for years until my cousin lent me the PlayStation 1 console. And then I've been a PlayStation fan ever since. But before that, I was a Super Nintendo fan. And I was curious about the Sega Genesis, but turns out, I'll tell you the honest truth. You know what? As far as the Sega brand goes, like I said, I've always wanted a Sega Genesis. But even in later years, the later Sega systems, the Saturn, the Dreamcast. When the Dreamcast came around, I had a job back then. I did not get the Dreamcast on $99.99. I did not get the Dreamcast when it was $99. So I will be getting the Sega Genesis Mini to see to play these retro games, which I've never, outside Sonic the Hedgehog, I play Sonic the Hedgehog, but I'll be buying this just to check out what I would have missed out on when I was a kid, and if I had got the Sega Genesis. Okay, so that's it for today's episode, and I'll see you next time.